So this is part of our telemed series. We're talking about first aid. What about psychological first aid? When you sense that the other person is in extreme tension, distress, etc. How can we deal with them in a telemed practice to help them deal with their problems?
Most of us know about first aid. Make sure someone is breathing, stop any major type of bleeding, and get that person to help. But what about psychological first aid? How do you help someone who's psychologically struggling?
The process is feedback. Number one, listen to what the person has to say. Listen to their feelings, validate their feelings by paraphrasing what they say. Paraphrase their feelings back to them. Bob says, I feel bad. Say, oh, you feel bad, Bob? Paraphrase it back to them. Don't add anything to it. Just try to change it a little bit to get their recognition. Then you need to go to step 3, listen, see if you're correct. If you're correct, go back to number 1, listen to a new feeling. If you're incorrect, then go back to number 1, listen again to try to get the first feeling. Get a couple of feelings from the person that you really understand that they're paraphrasing and they understand that you understand. After that, then you can express yourself over overall emotions, and now you got a big feedback loop of mental health support.
We used to think after a crisis or a trauma or after someone was in a disaster, they needed to debrief, to talk about the major details of the events that they had gone through. But research following 9/11 has challenged most of this thinking and has opened us up to a completely new perspective on dealing with grief and trauma.
You see, we now know that most people process trauma correctly. They deal with it. They learn to explore their emotions, change what they can, and accept what they can't. They move on. However, some people get a thought caught on one side of the brain or the other, and then they cannot release that thought, so they cannot release their trauma, and they relive it. They keep reliving it. That's what is called post-traumatic stress disorder. They cannot let go. We have to recognize we have the power to help them let go with our new systems, our QESP, Quantum Entwinement Subspace Prayer Therapy, will help you learn all of these.
We now know most people will recover from major crises and setbacks on their own. They don't need professional help. In fact, forcing people to debrief and talk about everything that's happened might actually hurt them. We also know that those classic stages of grief that we all used to believe in don't actually happen. But
yes, things are different now. We now know people are quite diverse. Everyone's different. Everyone has feelings that need to be validated. They're all different. We need to work. Everyone processes life differently. Everybody's a little different. But all people need to have social networks. They need to build social networks. We are social animals. We need networking. We need feedback, social feedback. The greatest punishment we give is solitary confinement. The Aborigines made you a no man. That's the punishment we give. Now, we are all social animals and need to network and talk and share and care. So this is what your job is, feedback.
But some people really do struggle after a crisis, and for them, psychological first aid can be really helpful. Psychological first aid is an approach to helping people that's based on scientific evidence. It's something anyone can do. It's not a treatment, but just like first aid, is designed to help people become stabilized. Step 1, safety, stabilize, and comfort. It's normal to be in shock when you're in a crisis. Maybe you're feeling like you're out of your body or things aren't real. You want to help the other person feel more present there with you. Ask them questions about where they are and their surroundings, or maybe use some deep breathing to help the person feel more in control of their breath. Muscle relaxation can also be helpful here. Let the other person know it's normal to feel a wide range of emotions, to feel out of control. All this stuff makes sense given the situation they're in.
Listen, paraphrase, listen again, feedback loop, until you finally get to a rapport state where you can start to offer some reaction and action plans.
We don't think clearly when we're hungry or dehydrated, so make sure the person has had food and is drinking water.
We now know that whole foods, whole plant foods are what we need, as it says in the Bible. But we also need to recognize we got to avoid synthetics and sugar and other things and get good healthy food and water to have good mental health. Yeah, we got to get the people off of the sugar. We got to get them onto good fiber foods, etc. Because all of the different hormones we need for our brain are all built in the bowel bacteria. We need to correct this with good fiber.
Step 2, information and practical help. It's hard to deal with problems when you're emotionally struggling, when you're in the middle of a crisis. So here you want to get information on what are the challenges the person is facing and help them to overcome them. Maybe they need to book a plane ticket to get to family, or make some type of arrangements to get through the next days, or maybe they need to get in contact with their clergy or spiritual help. This is an opportunity for you to provide practical support. The other person might not have a good understanding of what's happened in the middle of this crisis. So if you have information about what's going on, give it to them. Just make sure you don't ask for details about the traumatic event that the person has gone through. There's no need for that. And remember, for some people, that can make them feel worse.
You have to listen, paraphrase, listen again, correct, and get into their perspective. Get into their shoes, as it were. Don't offer somebody who's very conservative astrological help if they don't really want it. Learn what they want and work with them. Feedback.
Step 3, socially connect. The number one thing that helps people heal from a trauma is connecting with the people they're close to. That means family, friends, coaches, teachers, their pets, community leaders, the clergy, support groups.
We all need feedback loops. We all need social connection. And we need to have our feelings validated and verified. Not just the facts, because facts are different, but feelings, those need to be validated.
When we're alone, we ruminate. We think about things over and over again. We don't get that important reality check that we need from other people. Getting social support also sets into place long-term support that the person is going to need in the days and weeks to come.
Doctor drugs can take away your reality check. We don't want those. You won't get happiness from a pill. We need feedback loop to process. We got to have a healthy brain, healthy body, healthy bowel to process.
Step 4, encourage coping. Making sure someone's having regular meals, getting to sleep, and getting regular activity are critical elements of psychological first aid. You also want to talk about ways people can deal with the powerful emotions that come up in these situations, from anxiety to anger. Help people identify ways of coping that work for them, like listening to soothing music or doing exercise, reconnecting with hobbies, journaling, watching a movie or TV show that helps them feel better, reading a book that distracts them for a while.
Listen, feedback, paraphrase, get into their shoes, start to find out what they need. What triggers them into problems, and what is for solution, what triggers them into solutions.
Step 5, connect with help. If you're worried someone is at risk for hurting themselves, ask them if they're having any suicidal thoughts. This isn't going to put the idea in their head. Even for people who aren't at risk for hurting themselves, if you just mention the idea of going to a counselor or a therapist, this can help people down the road if they continue to struggle and do need professional support.
If they can't find emotional support, and if it isn't there for them to find in the family, etc., then help them to become their own emotional support, their own best friend. Teach them some of the ideas of how to treat themselves with respect in their mind, etc., so they become their own best friend and get their own networking. Now let's hear some bits of advice about...
So when people are angry, it's scary. It can be really scary to be around someone who's out of control. And when people seem to be out of control, the question becomes, how do we de-escalate that person? And I have 3 quick steps for you to follow. The first step, and now I really want you to follow me on this, is to validate that person. What do I mean? Here's what I mean. By validating someone, you are simply acknowledging how that person feels. In other words, if the person is fired up, angry, you're acknowledging that. Hey, you seem really fired up right now. Listen, depending on your vocabulary, your vernacular, and how you want to say it, that's all on you. But how it comes across is that it needs to be about validation. It needs to be about recognition of how the other person feels. Look, people might be right or wrong for their actions, but nobody is right or wrong for how he or she feels. So, if someone is angry, they have a right to be angry. If people feel hurt or sad or mad or glad or happy or whatever they feel, they have a right to that. So, when someone's out of control, they have a right to feel that way. Now, we want to try to help them regain control, so the first step is to validate them. Validate how someone feels, no matter where they are. Now, I want to take this a step further, because oftentimes people believe that validating someone means, oh, hey, wow, you seem really fired up, and that's enough. That's not enough. We don't validate someone until we think they've been validated. We need to validate others until they actually feel validated. And here's how we can tell if someone feels validated. When someone's angry and fired up, they're emotional. It's a visceral, it's a physical reaction. But when the person feels validated, as though he or she has finally been heard, then there's a release. And when you see that release, then you can move on to step 2.
In the feedback loop, you listen to the feelings, you paraphrase, listen, see if you're correct, and then keep that into a cycle until you know that you're there. You validated their feelings. Use the feedback loop process.
Step 2 in de-escalating someone is to help people find options. In other words, there's always a choice. In everything we do, we always have a choice. And someone who's out of control still has a choice to act however he or she wants to act. But what we want to do is help that person explore what those options are. In other words, once we've validated that person, and once that person feels like, all right, okay, I feel heard, I feel understood, now we can explore options. There are options. Look, you can do that thing, which is that out of control thing that you were impulsively thinking about doing, and that is an option, but let's explore the consequences of that option. Now, once we explore that consequence of that option, which again, that's viable choice because that's what that person was obviously feeling and thinking. Once we explore that, now we can move on to other options. Now, you could do that, or we could step back, we could walk away, we could think about something else, and that's when we can start to pull in our ideas. You see, when we're really heated up, we only see things in a very narrow-minded way. But when we step back, we can see a bigger picture. So when someone's fired up, they're very singularly focused on whatever it is that they're angry about. We have a macro vision, right? They have a micro vision, we have a macro vision of the situation because we're not emotionally involved. So we can help them explore a wider range of options. And again, if the person feels heard, then he or she is much more open to actually listening to those options. And once you validate someone, once you help that person explore options, you're ready to move on to step 3.
Use the paraphrasing. Try to express what they're feeling in a little different way, but paraphrase so that they know you're hearing them. And then check, and if you don't, do it again.
Step 3, now follow me on this, you might want to slow down the video. Most important step you can do, it's allow for choice. In other words, people always have a choice in anything that they're going to do, so you recognizing their freedom of choice and you genuinely and heartfelt Give them a chance to say, hey, listen, whatever you choose is on you, okay? I'm here with you, but whatever choice you make, that is your choice. And I respect your free will. So we're validating the person. We're helping them find other choices. And then ultimately, we're letting go. We're respecting their free will. And if you've ever been around someone who truly accepts you, who truly, genuinely, unconditionally accepts you for whatever choice you make, one of the things that you'll notice, or one of the things you have noticed if you've ever been around that, is you have no desire to fight for your position anymore, because this person is going to accept you no matter what. So now you don't have to fight to defend whatever irrational position you had. Now you are free to really explore the more effective, healthier, more compassionate, more rational choices. And when you can do that, now you're in a better spot to not only be de-escalated yourself, but to be able to make the best possible choices. So from the flip side, from the person who is de-escalating, from you, the person who tuned into this video on how to de-escalate someone, what you're doing is you're making a person feel emotionally safe enough to be able to say, look, I'm a human being. Yes, how I felt was super out of control. Maybe some of the things I've said or done are really just inappropriate and wrong, but now I can't change the past, and I am here in this moment. And so now the question is, what can I do from this moment forward to truly de-escalate someone? You validate them. You help them figure out other options. And then you provide a safe enough emotional space that you respect their free will to choose whatever they're going to choose. And I promise you, when you do steps 1 and 2, step 3 provides a whole different outlook than what would have happened had you not done the first 2 steps. This is one of the most effective ways you can de-escalate someone in any situation. Regardless of whatever you're dealing with, I'm certainly sending you much peace.
Try to teach them, if you want something different, then you've got to change. And how they do this is through choice. It's all about choice. So now you learned how to do feedback loops and how to get them out of emergency problems with mental first aid for the QESP technician.